Let's pretend like we don't know.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it's unusual to do it this way, but as I explained to Carol when I told you, so just so you, a couple things to start us off, and then it's your guys' meeting in terms of this. I have until 1:30,
Okay.
so at 1:25, I'd like to have 5 minutes to finish with my comments, but so it's your meeting up to 1:25, okay? If you want me to interrupt with questions, I can do that, or I can wait, to the end. Second thing is we'll take this videotape and we'll give it to the clerk who will post it, so it'll be like any other public communication, so anybody can watch it. So that the whole idea behind not meeting with people in advance is that it means that somebody, this is the way the lawyers explain it, is you want somebody to be able to say, hey, there was a piece of information presented that we didn't get to counter, we didn't get to offer a different point of view on, and so a decision was made without the full picture. So that's why it's going to get posted. So besides posting it, we will also communicate to Murata that we met and that it's posted, and that if they want to watch it, this is where they need to go to watch it. And also if they want to meet in advance, I'm willing to meet with them, and I would do the same thing, videotape it and post that meeting so that you guys could see what happened at that meeting. So anyway, that's, so now it's your meeting. All righty.
I think John is not coming because he told me
Okay.
I'll talk to you. I said I'd talk to him after
Okay.
this, so I think.
Okay.
So if you want to start, do you want to start?
Well, you go ahead.
There are two main points that we want to make. The first one has to do with Ojai as Ojai is impacted by this CUP, or by the supplemental. Well, just by the project. The first is whether they were notified properly, and the second is about the actual impacts upon Ojai. And there's some discussion back and forth between CFROG and Ms. Brillhart and what numbers are supposed to be evaluated, and I actually think that you're going to be better at describing the different ways of looking at the numbers, the thresholds and such.
Right.
So maybe you can introduce that.
Well, I think we've probably made our point pretty clear already, I think, in some of the paperwork, and I think you're privy to all that paperwork, but.
That's right. So
Okay,
I've read the letters. Okay.
We can assume that.
That you sent,
Right. So I think essentially that, you guys are the lead agency and you have a responsibility to review a project under CEQA. And you really don't defer that referral to the guidelines of another agency. So our argument is that you can't find consistency with the Ojai Valley General Plan or the General Plan of Ventura if you proceed in that
area
manner.
plan.
Well, yes, the
Yeah.
Ojai Valley Plan, which is, of course,
Part of the general plan.
which is the general plan. So, with that in mind, we contacted the city of Ojai, who responded with kind of typical city of Ojai responses, and frankly, the whole thing is out in front of us now. I mean, this is moving, and there is some outcry, and the feeling that we're not being heard, and I think that leads, of course, to issues of predetermination and all kinds of other things that may or may not be happening, but it just doesn't feel right. I mean, we went to the Piru Neighborhood Council meeting when the county came and talked to them about an oil and gas project. Now, albeit I don't think that was appropriate either, because it happened to be the night before they certified the project. But anyway, I think that it is imperative that when a project falls within the Ojai Valley Area Plan, it needs to be, Ojai needs to be noticed, and Ojai citizens have a right to weigh in. So I guess this is just a feeling among the citizens of Ojai that there is a rush to, I'll just keep using the word predetermination, and that it feels really uncomfortable. And that's against the backdrop of arguably the worst air quality in the county. I mean, I think we're equivalent to Simi now, and we have 1/10 the population. So I think there's some reason for concern, and I think that the discussion of air quality is a fair discussion to have with OHI. That doesn't mean that OHI's predetermined any kind of decision about it. That just means that it's a fair discussion to have, and not just receive a letter saying this is what we've decided. Too bad, so sad. So.
And let me also add that air quality is one of the issues.
Yes.
But it's not the only issue. I mean, the reason we went looking into this file was about traffic and about trucks and tankers making the turn at Koenigstein and 150. And it was during that research that we discovered the mapping problem that showed the project as not being affected by the Ojai Valley Area Plan. We have still difficulty comprehending how that map was created. We know how the map was created, but we don't understand
How the county got it wrong.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I can see the steps that would have caused. I can't comprehend the steps that would have caused. I can't comprehend how it could have happened. So there's that.
Okay.
And that speaks to a larger issue, which we'll get to in a second. But in 1983, the supervisors ruled on that intersection, saying that it was unsafe. Okay. Now the perspective of the planning department is that it is safe. But we feel that because Ojai residents, I mean, it's part of the Ojai area of influence, and Ojai ought to be able to have a chance to understand the issues. The residents ought to be able to weigh in. It's all happening very fast. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, so I think that she summed up the two issues well. I think there's one other issue that has been troubling me, and I think, again, the Ojai residents have a right to be concerned about this, is that the initial EIR in this project, which was done for cumulative effects as a result of the Whitman lawsuit, found that it was actually inconclusive as to the biological resources. And the reason it was inconclusive was because the biologist sent to do the site study was sent during the summer. And so it was 100 and something, he said, when he was out there looking at the site. And he said, really, it's really hot. And, this is not a good time to do a biological review. There's flora and fauna aren't here, and I don't know. I see a few things, but I don't see everything. So I recommend, there is an urgency now. This thing's been held up by a lawsuit, and, we need to move forward. So let's move forward, but let's convene a task force, and let's have that task force include Forest Service. And they named about 5 or 6 entities that would be involved in it, including the public, and in this cumulative review of the effects of oil and gas on biological resources. And, representatives from the oil industry, as should be, and their interests be understood in this study. And, of course, the task force was never convened. So the suggestion, when this came up again, the exact same CUP, let's do the task force, or whatever, let's do an ISBA, let's do this the right way. And there was a determination that they did it well in 1983, and it was a in-house staff decision, and that they weren't going to look at it again. And I feel, again, this is another point where the city of Ojai, or the Ojai Valley citizens, were left out of the possibility of participating in this review and having a say in what's happening.
So the biological review that you're referring to is the one that took place back in the 1980s?
Yes.
That biological review?
Yes.
That said there should be.
Where he said it was 100 and something, there should be a task force.
Right.
So I think there's a few reasons why, when we found that this was within the Ojai Valley Area Plan, that there should be an opportunity for the citizenry to participate. I mean, my understanding of CEQA is that the law is pretty much laid out because there should be an opportunity for the public to participate and to feel heard. And we were at the scoping hearing, and we were at the planning director's hearing, and that was it. And we didn't get to review comments that other people wrote. We only found out at the planning director's hearing, where after the planning director's hearing in the final documents, what other people had said or written during the project.
Let me turn.
Grandson.
Let me turn our attention. I'm trying to list being kind of like this morning to the response by Ms. Pilhart to our comments to the City Council, and she makes the point that in the APCD guidelines, and you can describe this better, that basically the point is you can't count, you can count trucks, but you can't count wells because because the emissions from them are already being counted separately. So then she goes on for a couple of pages describing the impacts of the trucks, but we're not talking about the trucks. We're talking about the wells. And so my question is, I understand why these numbers are supposed to be divided. You don't want to count them twice. But what I don't understand, and what none of us understand, is who's adding them up. Who reviews the cumulative effects of the facilities that are under the APCD purview and those that are not. So that's something that we would like to understand, because our impression is that the planning department defers to APCD and says this is under APCD, and then when we speak to APCD, they say, well, that's not our thing, that's just we just work for the planning department. So we need to understand better who's monitoring the total numbers so that we are properly following what's it called? It's the new, what's it called? The new, Mr. Bosco referred to it down here. Anyway, it's I can
New emissions.
The new air emissions plan, right.
Yeah,
no, but-
yeah. So, I mean, okay, they're talking about 6 wells under this, but what if they wanted to put 19 more wells? What if they wanted to put 25 wells? When do we analyze the effects of those wells, and shouldn't OHI get a chance to weigh in on those since they're under their, I mean, when does OHI get a chance to decide if it's too much for the Ojai Valley? So there's that.
All right.
Do you want to talk about the larger picture?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
This is one example, but it's just one example. CFROG has dug deeply into 3 files. I mean, we've looked at many files. We've dug deeply into 3, and in each of those 3, we found mapping problems that led to the planning department admitting they made a mistake. How many more are there? Whatever the reason these problems are occurring, it seems to me that it's worth looking into how extensive they are. And it seems to us that there is a culture in the planning department that contributes to this, has been contributing to it for a long time. I don't know, well, why don't you speak to that a little bit, because I don't know how, I mean, you have some ideas about what ought to be done.
Well, I just think, I think that you guys have a really laudable mission statement. And I really have not felt that mission statement embodies the experiences that we've had. in dealing with the county. And as a citizen, I feel like anytime I raise a question, no matter how sincerely I say it or mean it, the answer will be to review me. However, and I'm wrong. I get that. You know, fine. It's a steep learning curve, and we've asked some stupid questions. And we've always, well, almost always been treated politely, but it's always to get at it and prove you're wrong. And I remember the first meeting we went to it was probably it was before CFROG was formed. It was a meeting to consider, I think it was it was Murata CUP 3319. And there were a lot of people there at this meeting. It was kind of unusual that so many citizens showed up. And one lady had actually, because fracking, everyone was concerned about fracking. And so one lady had taken the day off from her kindergarten class, gotten a substitute and come in. And at the end of the meeting, she looked at Mr. Baca, who was chairing the meeting, and she said, "It seems like you've just been sitting here shooting down everything everyone said all day." Well, I haven't experienced anything different than that. And this feeling about Ojai being shut out again is just another, just really glaring example of that. Go ahead.
Well, just to add that in every case that we found, these errors benefit the applicant and not the public necessarily. And to shoot down piecemeal each thing that we bring up is, I understand. It just seems that the analysis is weighted, and it's not comfortable to find ourselves in litigation. We don't enjoy it. It's not the way we like to go about this, and we actually what we've really come to is that we feel that the county is being placed. Yeah, okay. We feel the county is being placed at risk of unnecessary litigation, unnecessary cost, because of mistakes in the planning department. And at the last hearing, you actually made the argument that we were looking at, in that case, two different legal opinions: the ones that we were presenting and the ones that county council were presenting. And it's our position and our understanding that the courts in California are looking at these issues differently than county council for the county of Ventura. And we're a watchdog organization. We're here to raise these issues, and we're going to evaluate them how you do. But we think the county is being placed at risk. So that's our perspective.
And one thing, I don't know how we're doing on time, but one thing.
You don't have to fill the whole time, by the way. I don't want you to feel like you're struggling, but
we well may not.
But
one thing
I do want, yeah.
Well, the board did ask us to do a couple things, and so one thing I would like to ask you to do, I guess, you have power to do this, is that there is, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me, I was driving, but in any case, there is a directive in the Ojai Valley Area Plan that asks the planning director to include the statement about any project that has the potential to have more than 5 rock or knocks per day go before the Ojai Valley MAC, or the Ventura River MAC and the Ojai Valley City Council. And I believe I spoke to one of the county people yesterday who told me that she thinks that was actually put in the plan in 1996, and it still is not part of the initial study guidelines as was directed in that plan. So one of the first things we were told was, well, we're not going to take this to the Ojai City Council because it's not in the initial study guidelines. We don't have to. So I think that needs to be done immediately, and I think that's inexcusable. And it's just perhaps another example of what we're talking about. As using that now, what is it, 1996? That's 20 years ago or something as a reason. So I guess those are the main things that we wanted to talk to you about. Just give you an understanding of what we do and why we're doing it. We're not You know, I think all of us have just been appalled, really, to tell you the truth, at how, in our opinion, you know, much of CEQA and much of we read situations in other counties, cases that come before the court, and the amount of minutia that they deal with, and yet it causes a case, something to go back for review or send back to be remanded to the planning department. We're talking about huge issues, you know, big, blatant, we don't want to do that and we're not going to do it, kind of things that just don't seem like there's any way to go but just this clash. And I think I sent an email to you about a year ago saying, you know, I see a clash coming. And I think, you know, we just keep coming closer and closer to this. And I guess our hope is that we don't have to play it out in court. Not because we can't get legal support, because we can, but because we'd rather not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a few things. I wish John was here so he could hear this, but it's probably good that we're videotaping it so that he has it. The first thing I just want to say is there's something you're trying to communicate that I want you to know I intuitively feel because I've been in your spot. I think about the example. They were trying to push the State Water Project through, you know, in Ventura, and they were playing with the facts, they were playing with the figures, and I was on the Citizens Water Committee, and I was just spending enormous hours going through all this stuff, and then coming in and showing them how they just played with this number to try to make their State Water Project look better, and it's tremendously frustrating, you know, when you feel like that, because you're, as a citizen, you don't have the access to all the tools, and so
right.
you know, and you don't have the background and the experience, and so you're trying to gear yourself up. So I believe the county should be accepting of, and just, you know, and you know, I appreciate the fact that you said you've always been treated politely, but politely is a little bit different, you know, and this is a nuance, and so it's hard for me to even probably communicate this to staff, but there's a difference between politeness and you can be polite and not be respectful, you know, and that's what I really think I'm hearing you say, is that you're concerned about whether you're, you know, if somebody's just trying, you know, my only goal is to try to shoot you down and show how wrong you are. There's another way for me to say, I think you're wrong, but and I see people that are able to do that, and other people that have more difficulty in terms of doing that. So it's important for me that happen, but I'm not there at all of those situations and all that stuff. So I just want you to know, I get the frustration, you know, and it's particularly frustrating because sometimes, as you said, you've been right and sometimes you've been wrong. When you're wrong, it's like you have to go back and you have to like earn it back, you know, by being right 3 or 4 times before you kind of get there, because and I've been there too. I've been wrong and went, oh gosh, there goes my credibility on this, and now I've got to, you know, get back in the saddle and do it. So the system should not make anybody feel uncomfortable presenting a logical, rational case, and to the extent that it has, I just want to apologize on behalf of the county. It shouldn't happen, but there are 8,000 employees here, and lots of things going on, and a long history of oil, and gas, and mapping, and rules, and policies, and you know, trying to get there. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I want to emphasize is that the mapping thing concerns me a lot, and I don't mind saying that publicly right now. The mapping thing concerns me a lot because, as you are saying it, I'm going, how could it happen? How could you ask for the map and it says here, and somebody else got a different map? If it is somebody in you know, so I'm going to investigate that. If in my mind, if motives were anything less than pure and it was just an honest mistake, then there's going to be some, you know, I would take a very strong stand on that. So you guys could help me by identifying the other two mapping things again. I know I could go back in the record and find them, but I want to compare those mapping things to this one, because this one strikes me as, I have serious questions about this. I'm not sure with the other ones, you could
You
say,
mean the
hey,
other two cases?
the other two cases of mapping errors, were they ones that make me
I can
go,
just name them off.
okay, great.
One is when we discovered that a permit had been granted that a hillside was raised and a well put in, not where it was approved to be put in.
Right.
And the county apparently issued a grading permit erroneously based on
Issue-
issues
Right.
with mapping.
So,
That
Proved a
was-
well in the wrong place.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so was that was it an issue of, you see, this is an example where,
And ordered it
where,
restored. And,
yeah, this is, okay, but good. And that, so anyway, we'll be able to work with
Okay.
that, okay? And the
the
other
other
one?
one was in Peru, where the environmental or the biological study was performed in the incorrect portion of the site.
Uh-huh.
So the testimony was given about this biological report, but then when we looked at the maps, we realized it was done on a portion of the site that didn't refer to the project.
Uh-huh, okay.
So
good.
then that was the one when there was an errata done the day before the planning commission hearing, changing the location of the project. And the location was changed from the original drill pad, which I can't remember the number of now. It was changed then to drill pad 10
Where
in
the
the
study was,
errata.
where the study was done.
No,
Oh.
the study wasn't even done there. The study was done down the hill from there at even another location.
So, yeah, so the reason I ask is because I want to try to find out, are these human errors that took
Right.
place because people are moving fast?
And it may or may not
or-
be the same
Mhm.
situation in this particular case that we're referring to with the Ojai Valley Area Plan. Let me see if I can clarify. So we have a building on our property that we want to convert to a guest house, okay? So I went down to the planning department and I said, I want to get this project started. And they put my APN number in the computer and put it up against the Ojai, they wanted to see if it was in the city limits. So the first thing he did was look at that, and then he looked at what the zoning was, and then he looked at the Ojai Valley Area Plan. And when he saw that I was good on all those requirements, we moved ahead. So really, this is what I can't get my head around. If you look, it didn't print very well, but if you look at the map,
Sort of like, how could you get it wrong?
well, I don't understand what this map is here to do. The only thing that you would need to know whether the project was in the area plan is to put it up against the overlay that says Ojai Valley Area Plan. This has, it's not a question of zoning, that's not a part of the debate, but there's zoning lines, there are a lot of information on this map that I don't understand.
General plan lines are
General
there that
plan
don't
line.
belong there.
Yeah. So I have difficulty understanding the point of this map unless it's to be confusing.
Right. Well,
I also have some difficulty understanding how it is that a highly experienced planner would look at this project that even with this very confusing map is quite close to the boundary of the Ojai Valley Area Plan, and not say, I really wonder, I'm going to double check that. There's wording in the Ojai Valley Area Plan that puts the line where it is. It's not just the map boundary.
If you were looking at it to determine whether it ought to be evaluated by the Ojai Valley Area Plan, it would be easy to determine that it was. If you were looking at it to determine how it could not be evaluated under the Ojai Area Plan, you would have to do something to it.
you might have confusing information.
And there was a question in some of the correspondence about misreading a map, okay, or the map coming from somebody else. But this code here indicates that the map was generated by the GIS mapping entity within RMA, so it was made in-house.
So I want to go back to the very first thing that I talked about, and that is, so as an elected representative of all of the people, you guys and the oil companies and everybody else, I think it's my responsibility to try to make sure everybody's treated respectfully, not just politely, but respectfully. One, and it's most important that I make sure that we can't eliminate human errors.
Sure.
But if there is any nefarious action taking place, that we take a really strong stand on. So I'm not saying there is in this situation, but I can't understand, just like you, from what I've gotten information so far, I can't understand how this happened. So I certainly will look at that hard, and I will try to make public what I find out, simply because I want everybody to know that there's somebody that you can turn to say, hey, we think something shady happened here. There have been times when I was in your role, you know, as a watchdog, and I would say, I think something shady's happened, and I felt like nobody really wanted to give me an answer one way or the other. So I will investigate this and give you at least my opinion as to whether I think this was human error or whether I think there was something else going on. So anyway, I just want you to know I heard you on the map, and so I appreciate having the other two, because we may have a system where just all kinds of sloppy work was done on mapping back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Or we may have a situation where somebody's intentionally not doing this, and it could be anywhere in between those two.
Mhm.
And I just want to.
But either way, it opens you guys up for
Exactly.
problems.
Exactly. Knowing what it is, you've brought up enough to suggest that that we ought to. This shouldn't be sort of a common occurrence every time there's a thing. Well, first let's get the mapping errors fixed, before we start to do the project. What I mean?
Right.
We ought to be able to just trust the maps as we go forward. So that's one thing. The other things about the openness of the process, et cetera, is part of this sort of sense of respectfulness, that needs to happen. If people just go, hey, we know, we have in other situations union contracts, I'll give you for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've gotten to the point where it didn't used to be this way, where unions feel like, if something comes up, they're going to let us know. They're not going to quietly kind of bury this,
Undermine it. Yeah.
they just have that. They have a sense that we respect them enough that we're going to do that, and I want to try to get to that point here with this relationship as it goes forward. It is. One of the reasons why I had a conversation with John at the boardroom when he came in on one thing, I said, it is easier for me, it's not a requirement, but it is easier for me to sell that or make that happen if also the people coming back at staff are respectful with staff. So if the respect goes both ways, it's just obviously easier for that to happen. But it's not a requirement. The respect should be there regardless when it comes from the public and the people that are working for the public. So I want to take that to, I've been working to try to take that to the next level, and I want to keep working and take that to the next level. So the map is one. The 5-pound rule is critical here, because if it's not over 5 pounds, then all of these notification kind of things, or many of them, may not kick in. What I would hope is, in the most respectful process, it would be, we believe it is not a 5-pound thing, but we're going to let you know this is what we're thinking about doing, and this would be an example in my mind of respect. We're going to let you know that we think that's going to be our opinion. We're going to give you a few weeks to get back to us and let us know, and at least we made this decision, and we know it might be controversial. We may agree with you or disagree with you when you come back. That would, in my mind, that would make me feel more confident.
I don't think anyone's asking for anything more right now.
Yeah, you know what I mean, in terms of that. Now, I don't know whether that's doable or not,
Right.
quite frankly, in
Understood.
terms of all of the things. Because you could take that to the nth degree and not be able to get anything done, with every decision. But so the 5-pound rule, I don't know how that all shakes out. What I do know is this, is that you have APCD. You guys have legitimately raised the point. Well, let me stop and emphasize this. This is, from the very beginning, I've said publicly, the value of CFROG is that there's balance. You know that the oil interests are going to have professionals that are going to get the data right and review, et cetera. Citizens are busy going about doing their jobs, and nobody is sort of on the other side, digging into the paperwork and all that other stuff. So to the extent that CFROG found a mapping error, that's really exactly what is the biggest benefit of CFROG, is that you have people that have gotten familiar enough with how to do this research and all of that stuff, and care enough to do it that they found something. And then CFROG also is pointing out that you really have three policies. You have APCD's policy on air quality and all that stuff. You have CEQA guidelines about when do you do CEQA. And then you have the county's general plan as expressed by the Ojai Area Plan. Well, you have to find consistency with all three of them. I mean, you can't, as is pointed out, you can't sit there and, you don't have the choice. And to the extent that those policies haven't been reconciled properly or clearly, that's another advantage of CFROG, and that you're going to force that discussion, and I'm going to have that discussion. So I just want you to know I will be looking into that whole issue. I don't know what the result is going to be. Issues about whether wells count or don't count. Your point about, well, who tolls? I mean, I'll give you an example of an issue that we talked about at one point in time. At some point in time, somebody wanted to say, well, 0.4 should count at 0, so 0.4 over and over again adds to 0.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have 0.4 times 1,000 of something, you have a real impact, and we were able to make that point. You're raising sort of a similar argument. That's an argument that we raised on our own. Citizens didn't bring it to us, and we got policy change as a result of that. But policy doesn't change without getting it raised, the hard work, and all that other stuff. So I don't know whether there's a change here or not, but at least I get it in terms of looking at that. Right?
Well, can I just
Go
say,
ahead.
as you look at that, I mean, it's our understanding that CEQA supersedes a county general plan. So the CEQA guidelines can't be permitted. I mean, you can't permit your way around CEQA. So I don't really so that's something it doesn't seem like they have to be reconciled so much as the county's rules must.
Well, the argument I would offer to you back there is that's why people go. I mean, that's why there's so much controversy about CEQA. What is the CEQA rule on the 5-pound thing? I could potentially,
It's the Ojai Valley
I could
Plan.
hear, I could exactly, I could potentially hear somebody. I could potentially hear two experts sitting at the table. And when you made the comment, you said CEQA is about giving the public the input.
Mhm.
I think when I hear them talk, I hear the lawyers more talk. CEQA is about making sure that all of the information is made available, and all of the people that have credible information.
So that
are-
the
so that-
public has a right to
Well,
review.
Well, no, so that the decision makers have all of that information. But anyway,
Okay,
so the bottom line is exactly. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's a little nuanced. But so I could hear two experts, one of them sitting there saying, well, the CEQA threshold here is APCD's rules, and somebody else would say, no, the CEQA threshold is the general plan, because it's not like the state didn't pass CEQA and say this is the poundage threshold for a project in Ojai. What makes it? What makes it?
But you're the lead agency.
Yeah.
I mean, we can litigate
It's-
this one, but
Yeah,
you're the lead
it's
agency.
and there is
you have
discretion
the-
given to the lead agency and all that other stuff. So when you say Wayne, CEQA trumps, yes, CEQA trumps. The question is,
How do you determine?
so even if CEQA trumps, I would turn it around the other way. Nobody's saying CEQA doesn't trump, because that's state law, right? So state
Right.
law trumps, right? But state law also says we have to do things consistent with our general plan. So
Yeah.
they're equal from that standpoint. Now the question is approving this project consistent with our general plan? If it, depending on is it over 5 pounds or not? That's what technical people have to,
And that's one of the issues. That's
Sure.
just one of
Exactly.
Well, and also, Steve, so yesterday we went, Rich went and talked to Chuck, the author of the ABCD.
Chuck
letter that you're
Thomas.
Holding Chuck Thomas, and he said unequivocally that the ABCD stands behind 2 pounds of ROC per day per wellhead, site specific.
Right. Uh-huh. So, but is it by definition, whatever that definition is? So I'm saying I just don't know on that. But assume if it is, right, there still is this question of reconciling may not be the right thing. You have to actually be consistent with all three things.
That's right.
You know what I mean? You
Yeah, I
have to.
understand.
You have to do all three. Well, what is consistency with all three?
Yeah.
That's that's where you get into the maybe a gray area, and so I will be looking at that. So and again, I appreciate that CFROG has found the mapping thing, and I appreciate that CFROG is pointing that out, because had CFROG not pointed that out, that conversation about those three may not have taken place, right? Okay, so I hope that helps. You've got our full attention. I don't mind being public about saying I want to be advocates for groups like you that are trying to work within the system and trying to work respectfully. I mean, you guys have been nothing but respectful, and polite every time, that we've interacted with you. And I really appreciate that, because it makes it easier for me to represent you, when that happens and stuff. And, and not everybody's always in that situation. So I appreciate it. I want to do that. I would, quite frankly, want to do the same for the oil industry. I
Right.
want them to be respectful and
Right.
do that, but I want to make sure that they're respected as they're trying to come forward and do it. So I'm happy to try to play that role. I'm sorry that you've experienced the frustrations that you have. I have not. I've experienced frustrations also working with the process and all that other stuff. It is the nature of.
Yes.
It's the nature of this business. And when people were talking to me about CFROG and Forming, I said, get ready, because it will be loaded with frustration, as I experienced when I played various roles in watchdog groups on land use and other things that I've been involved in, as we go forward. But that's why I have sort of, I think, a special empathy for trying to make sure this is right. So I'm happy to say I've had multiple conversations about the planning department, what their proper, interaction should be. I believe that over the years there has been significant change in that, but that doesn't mean that I think we're all the way there and it's all settled at this point in time. So.
And I think there's been significant change too in just a couple of years. We've been looking at projects that have come out of the county, actual EIRs or even mitigated negative declarations. So
Significant change for the better?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely.
Well, that's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to ask you two guys, you have anything you want to add before we shut the videotape off or anything else? Right? All right. You guys got anything else you want to finish up with before I walk out? I got about
It's
2
not
minutes.
about jobs.
Now you're into the lobbying side of it, right? That's for the
We're on
hearing,
camera,
right?
aren't we?
Yeah. That's for the hearing. Thanks for taking the time. This in my mind, this was very productive. I hope you guys felt that way.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Good seeing you. All right. Tell Bill hello.
Right.
Tell John hello.
Rain, feel free to do a little singing.
Oh,
That's right. There you go. Cindy, is this yours?
Right,
There you go. Great.
and I'll walk you guys back up.
all right.
All righty. Thanks.
Okay, take care. All right.
Sneak up back.
Watch that there, Rain. And neither Steve nor I fell off.
That's good.